honestly, I think this is a very exciting time in the industry where we're changing the way we do business. The last time this really happened in the technology industry was when we migrated or changed from mainframes, roll and scroll screens, to the x86 platform, Apple and Microsoft and such. So this is a huge time for technology, and it's having a direct impact on business. Little different than the initial move, which was we're just going to move from one platform to another with x86, and there'll be some advantages along the way, and it'll drive down your cost, and so on and so forth. This is actually considerably more impactful to an organization because data is going to transform everything within your environment. Understanding the data and being able to leverage it, that's a good thing. Being able to increase your insight, being able to understand what the future holds for you, all of these things, and make intelligent business decisions based on data. And data comes, of course, in all forms. We call it the new oil, but it really comes in all forms. Structured data, which is your columns and rows, your unstructured data, which is just your, like a document that might be semi-structured, but kind of unstructured, your chats, things like that, internet information that's just kind of flowing out there. Those are kind of your two major data areas, and there's other data, graph data and vectorized data and such, but really being able to control what that data is huge. And so there is a method to doing this. The first step really is to understand that data. You have to in order to build a foundation in which all data can come into your environment and be processed repeatably and consistently, is going to require that you build a framework, a strong framework that can understand and ingest your information at the speed the information is being received. I often tell people the access to data is like a lake, a huge lake. But unfortunately, most of us are only using about a small puddle of water versus the entire lake of data. And the reason why is because we don't have the processes in place, this foundation in place. And it starts with understanding your data. It's amazing how many organizations simply do not understand all of the data that they have. And this is data that users are using every day, or data that they use from a centralized data repository or some sort of database application that you're using to run your business. All data, all good. Now, for me, I believe the quickest way to understand somebody's data, it's not in this document, but just a side note, I think the easiest way is to ask the person what applications they use. You see, most people may not be able to answer what data they use. It's kind of an abstract question. But if you ask them, hey, what applications do you use every day? Oh, okay, so you're using application XYZ. Where does that information reside, right? Where do you get it from? Oh, I get it from over here. And usually people can back into it. Oh, okay, I see the application. It means something to me. And now I know where the data is. And if they can't, that's okay too, because then you have a place to start your investigation, to dig deeper into where that data actually resides within the environment. This is I believe, a more efficient way to really understand the data within the environment. But the bottom line is you got to understand the data, because you can't really build the foundation until you understand the data. So, and I know for some organizations, this is a big deal, right? That you have a lot of data, and I'll give you some suggestions at the end on how you can kind of deal with that resource constrained environment. But let's move to the next step here, which is improve the data. Now that you understand where the data is and what the data is, now we begin to kind of create this environment where we can search for this data. This is really the beginning of where your data becomes an asset to your organization. And we label it as such. We want to label it in a data catalog, for example, as a data asset. That means that if I'm putting together a data visualization, let's just say a PowerPoint presentation or a slides presentation or whatever application you're using, if I'm putting together that application, I know, and I'm showing a pie chart, I know where those pieces of the pie exist. I know where the data points are that feed those pieces of the pie in that report. This is an important kind of example to remember when we talk about classifying and cataloging our data. When we catalog our data, we want to know what all those data points are, because the reality is that we may have those data points inside of an environment, and they could be used for multiple uses, right? So we want to make sure we do that. So we talk about how to improve the data here. Now we shift once now, and honestly, the third step here, or third phase, is kind of goes with the second phase. You're understanding the data, right? You're improving the data, excuse me, and now you're going to sustain it. And to sustain it, we really need to focus on what the governance looks like. So now we've identified where the data assets are. We understand where they're coming from. Now we need to manage how they come into our environment and what type of format do they come in. And you can read other papers that I have posted about how to build data dictionaries, or how to build meta tags, or how to really start getting after data governance. And there's a lot more details than I'm going to go into here. But the takeaway, I guess, from building governance is you want to have some rules in place. What does the right data look like? When somebody wants to collect, for example, they have a database in the distance, we'll call it database A, and they're trying to create a visualization, and they have database A, B, and C, and they're trying to pull information from all three of those databases. Well, when it comes into a centralized location for either use as maybe a generative AI application or maybe a visualization, that data is all going to flow into a centralized area, most likely, and we're going to want some structure around that data, and we're going to want standards associated with that data, hence the need for governance. So we're going to need to be able to kind of increase and scale our data. Governance is going to give that to us, but we want to make sure that we have the quality of the data, because it's the quality of the data that truly transforms it into a strategic value for our organization. As illustrated here, data is coming from literally everywhere. Again, back to that visual, a lake of information. We may only be seeing a puddle or maybe just a raindrop. So how do we see this as strategic value? Well, without the 3 steps before this, if you're thinking, I'm just going to jump directly to artificial intelligence and visualization and automation, you're gonna get what you put into it. And the old saying, garbage in and garbage out, is not lost in this conversation. You need to get your data in order. Once you have it in order, then you can start garnishing strategic value from that data. But until you get it in order, you're going to struggle with that. And then once you get that, now you're going to really be able to harness this data for decision making. Maybe you're going to use it with a generative AI model, a large language model. Maybe you're going to use it just for dashboards or automation. All of those things are dynamic information in your dashboard. All of that, very, very possible, but it's dependent, and I cannot emphasize this enough, absolutely dependent on the quality of the data you have within your system. If you have bad data, you're going to have bad results. And so here, just in summary here, look, The reality, this is a lot of work. And I had said I'm going to give you a little tip on how to get started, because it can be overwhelming and create a lot of anxiety for you and your organization. My suggestion is you need to get to the final destination, which is control of all of your data. But begin with your high value targets, things that are going to really make an impactful change for your organization, whether that's a government organization doing military actions, or whether it's a financial organization, or whatever it is that your organization is. Pick something to do a visualization on, something that will drive value for you, and start at the end and work backwards. Now, what I mean by that is draw out, maybe you already have it, draw out what the perfect dashboard or the perfect information you would want to get out of a generative AI would look like. What does that look like in your mind? What does that look like? Draw it out. Once you draw it out, now take that apart, go backwards, and say, okay, what are the data sources that feed this information? How dynamic is this information? Is it constantly being updated? And what is the integrity of the data that we need for this? Answer all those questions, but focus on a specific outcome. Now, with that outcome, you can then back into it. Okay, now I know that this visualization is going to require access to these 4 data systems. Great. That's next step below that. And inside of those data systems, it's going to require access to these columns and rows of information, or this unstructured data set, whatever it is. Great. Next step below. Now I put in my governance and I say, okay, now I know exactly what I want in that impactful study or report or dashboard, whatever it is that you're working. And now I want to be able to govern that. So the governance that you set up and the steps before this, now you start saying, okay, now when this data comes in for this visualization, we need it to be with these meta tags. We need it to be organized this way, blah, blah, blah. And you implement your structure of governance, your governance framework on top of it. Now you're cooking with gas. You're making your way down the road. It's exactly where you want to be. And the last thing you do is you add automation to it, because you understand where your guardrails are with the implementation of your data governance model, and you understand the content because you started with the end and worked your way back. So you know what all those data sources look like, and then you build that automation. And that automation will probably take the form of an ML ops environment, machine learning operation environment, or something of that nature. Whew. All right. Well, that's all I have for you today. I'm pretty excited about this. The journey to data transformation is an arduous journey. But if you take it one bite at a time, eventually you're going to look back and see, oh, wait a minute. Now I created that visualization over there a month ago, and I put everything into my governance model and I wrapped automation on it. Now I've got my second target. I'm doing the same thing. Oh, hey, now I've got all this information in my governance and my data catalog. Hey, I'm going to create visual number 3 based on the data and the feeds and the information I have that are supporting visual 1 and visual 2. Now I start growing this even faster, right? Because I've already done the data governance. I know where the data sources are because I've cataloged it all, and I'm cooking with gas. So good luck with your adventure. It's a wonderful thing. It is transformational. So be careful, watch what you're doing, and I'm sure you're going to have great success. Good luck.